And it kills your psyche, because at the end of the day, you have to go into this with a 5 or 10 year plan or an expectation. It might take 5 or 10 years for this to be financially fruitful. Whether that means like you're less involved in the business and so life is better and easier, or a financial windfall. But either way, like I think you have to have that expectation. You have to make it long enough in the seat to get there. And if it's unsustainable, like mentally, whatever it is, like I don't know. I think you're probably one of the first people to speak to making it sustainable.
If you can make it to year 10, the like 5% growth in year 10 is so much larger on like a fixed dollar basis than the 20% growth in year 1. And so like, you know, we were talking in the last episode about, do I care about IRR versus do I just care about MOIC? Like in theory, if you only care about MOIC and you think you only care about actually like dollars of profit, like you should be optimizing for like, how do I get to do this for 10 years and not 3 years? Welcome back to The Intentional Owner. How's it going?
It's going great. Long time no see.
We're recording back to back. I don't think this is a new attempt. We're behind. We're catching up. We're trying to save our good friend Johnny from not having to just turn around podcast episodes in 2 days. Well, so I've got a new hat on today that I want to tell you about. It says Wawa greater than Wharton.
For Wharton less than Wawa.
Well, it depends on how you read it. But we did a trip to Philly, I think I told you a few weeks ago, with a bunch of my college friends. And, you know, we were all undergrad at Wharton. And so I got these hats made by our like local screen printing people. This is completely unofficial merch that I got made just for the trip.
But there's a backstory, right?
Not much, to be honest. It basically... Like, I think it's just a statement of fact that we like Wawa more than we like Wharton.
Okay.
Do you know what Wawa is, right?
Yeah, it's to be clear, if you're in the blue collar services space, you should certainly know what Wawa is. It's like the
we don't
gas
have them
station.
out west. Yeah, so that's the thing.
Aha. All right.
Yeah.
Gas station that's mostly known for the quality of their food, coffee, sandwiches in particular, but yes.
Yes. Well, so in college, like there were a couple Wawas on campus. So for us, that was like the late night, like you've been going out, right? And like you get that last meal, which you could get like the chicken tenders on a bowl of mac and cheese. It's like, oh, this is a good way to end your day. I can't, we didn't actually go get it because it's just like, I don't actually have the ability to eat that anymore, sadly. But it's hard to beat. Yeah. And it was also the early morning meals. Like when I played on the ultimate frisbee team at Penn. So when we would drive out to a tournament, like at like whatever, 6 a.m., we'd also stop at Wawa and get breakfast sandwiches. So it was like kind of your like 2 a.m. spot and your 6 a.m. spot. So pretty important.
That's really fun.
All right. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
So we got an email from an operator, which I appreciate. And if you guys have thoughts that we could talk about or anything, by all means, reach out. But I'll just read this off and then we can discuss it. I'll remove the identified details because I'm not sure if this person actually wants to be identified, but This is what it says. I acquired my business along with my brother. By all financial and operating metrics, it has been a great success. Here's the rub. We're doing well with it, but I find myself feeling disappointed. Don't get me wrong, I love this business, enjoy working with my brother, and actually like the work. But it feels like I should be happier about getting the deal done and operating successfully for a year. Classic arrival fallacy. I try to bear in mind that shit could hit the fan tomorrow, and I should be grateful for the success so far. Just goes to highlight, though, that business success is only one small part of happiness, and probably a small part at that. Maybe I'm alone in feeling this way, but I suspect so many searchers and SMB owners get trapped in this mindset that once they get a deal done and hit this target or that metric, they will be happy. Very easy to have blinders on, but it's silly to think that way, especially when you take the time to type it all out in an email.
That's a tough, sort of heavy email to get.
But real.
Super real. What did you think when you read that?
I think when I read that this is an experience that is probably more common than not. Like I would be willing to bet that greater than 50% of So former researchers, closed acquirers feel this way during their journey.
Agree. And I think it's in many ways something you can avoid by just thinking through. All right, so I'll just step back. I kind of think that we all generally live in our routines. And so in many ways, like, you can kind of predict the activities you're going to get into as a small business owner. And I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. What I'm saying is, like, the job of being a small business owner is not glamorous. And I think when you sign up to buy an SMB, you are not an investor. You are not a board member. You're not even an owner. You are the day-to-day fire drill chief leader, the day-to-day team manager, the day-to-day customer. Like, when an issue happens with a customer, you're like the ultimate backstop there.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, there's nothing glamorous about running a business day to day. In fact, for people who are like highly introverted, I think it's like there's some tension there, because you're almost your entire day when you're running a small business is interacting with other people. And so it can be really draining. We've talked about that, right?
Yeah, and I mean, especially early on as a business owner, like, a lot of the interaction is just negative, right? Like, everything that when things are going well, the problems, they're not coming to you. They're coming, like, either customers or team or vendors or whatever are coming to you to fix when something's gone wrong. So it's like every time somebody comes to you in that phase of the business ownership, you just sort of know, like, like something's about to hit the fan.
Like, you almost get, you and I've talked about this. I don't know if we've done it on the pod, that you almost get, so early on, little fire drills, little problems feel like huge problems, because everything is new and you have no way to know, is that customer calling the sign of a much bigger issue that could be, the beginning of the end of my small business? Or is it just like a one-off, fire drill, you put it out, you move on? You have no pattern recognition.
Correct.
And so over time, you almost get better at recognizing and responding to those little fire drills and being able to move on and not get so sort of mentally taxed when they happen.
Like, you can actually contextualize, is this a little fire drill or a big fire drill?
Yeah.
I think the biggest one, by the way, or like the one that's took me the longest to start to contextualize is when somebody leaves, right? Like, one of your employees leaves, right? Like, receiving notice from an employee that you like or that you had, high hopes for, is like, that's about as big of a gut punch as I felt.
Not just because you then have to go invest time and money to replace them, but because you kind of feel like you were their mentor, leader, and they leaving you, it feels super personal.
Yeah, it feels like a breakup, right?
Yeah, totally. All right, so what else here? Because the other thing I thought about is many want to be searchers or people planning on searching who are working jobs. What I've started doing when I interact with these people is I'll ask, like, why are you trying to get into SMB ownership? Because I think a lot of people, and I might put myself in this bucket, we're probably over indexing to, I don't like my job. I don't like my career path. This other one over here that I've read about in a book and listened to on a podcast sounds really interesting. Like, I get freedom. I get potential for generating some personal wealth. Like, of course that's for me. And sometimes when you get in the seat, it isn't better than your current job. It's just different than your current job.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I was definitely guilty of this because I had a little bit of a mental framing that, like, hey, if I'm going to grind at something for the next 5 to 10 years, right? Like, whether it's private equity or something else, like, at least let me grind at something where at the end, there's some time independence and equity value and all of that.
Yeah.
And the reality is, like, I mean, that still may or may not be true, but like actually living those 5 to 10 years, you got to do it in a way that's livable, right? I don't know why it seems so obvious now, but like it just wasn't a part of how I was thinking about it before about the business. Is like, what is my day to day going to look like? I really came into it as just like, okay, I'm going to grind for 10 years and I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah, or something as simple as you came from Wall Street where everybody was a night owl.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So what happens when you buy a blue collar home services business and the normal routine in that industry is to get started at 6 a.m.? It's like one of those very basic things that for night owls, like totally flips you on your head.
Totally. And that's where I like, when I think about like, the question that I got asked of like, how did your private equity skills transfer? Like, what matters more is like, can I be functional at 6:30 a.m. and like deal with problems? Like that's a skill, right? I actually don't need to do that at 3 a.m. the way I used to in PE, right? Like I need to be able to do it at 6:30 a.m. and not be like a total pill to deal with.
At 3 a.m., you better be like 2 REM cycles in. That's the skill.
Exactly. Yeah, no, literally. But it's a good point. Like I think the first thing you said, which I want to double click on, is like your life is just a series of routines.
Yeah.
Right. And the person who wrote into us, like he mentioned arrival fallacy. And I think that that's a kind of key distinction here, right? Is like, are you attempting to get to a spot or are you trying to build a series of routines you like? Right. And like, those are two different ways to approach this. And I think my learning at least has been that like shooting for that end goal is never sufficiently satisfying if your routines along the way are unpleasant.
Agree. And to tie a full bow on it, for those of us who went into this thinking, build equity value, create wealth, because we've talked a lot about kind of time independence and routines. Yep. The return there is like, it is so long and so distant. It's not like you have an ability to make a big fat cash distribution to yourself in the early days. Unless you're acquiring, it's not like the equity value feels tangible or even bigger in the first few years. I mean, I would ask you, do you feel that way? Do you go calculate your equity value?
I mean, I do, but it doesn't look that good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it changes, week by week or month by month, right? You look at your KPI dashboard and you're like, geez, we're just not growing leads that fast. Like what? And it just makes you go through this mental gyration that it kind of can suck all the love out of it.
Totally. And so like for me, like when I look at how my workflows look like right now, like adding this Tuesday work from home into my routine, like that has been a way more material quality of life improvement than my equity value increasing. Because we're still like, I still feel confident we'll generate equity value. It'll be a good return for everyone, but we're still a few years away from that. Like that doesn't get me through like the depths of Seattle winter, right? Whereas like a Tuesday work from home where I get to sleep in a little bit, I make myself a coffee and then I work like more of a 9 to 5 rather than like a 7 to 3. Like that actually makes my week more enjoyable.
That's really interesting. So what else could you tell people to take away from that? Like, do you almost acquire around your own habits and routines? Or I don't know, some of this feels kind of inevitable when you buy a small business.
Yeah, I think it's less that you like buy based on your preferred habits and routines, but more like, look, the first 6 months of buying a business are kind of like helter-skelter no matter what. That just is the deal. But I think like once you're past that immediate transition point, I think like I would strongly push owners to become more and more intentional about what their weeks look like, right? And I think like I did not do that for 2.5 years of ownership, and I wish I had started being more intentional about my time sooner, because otherwise, like basically I was just like white knuckling it through the end of each week and then like crashing all weekend and then trying again the next week.
So I think you implemented these changes through like your conversations with a business coach. Is that right?
Yeah.
At least some of this?
Partially with the business coach, partially with Anna, because she was witnessing it obviously up close.
Yeah. So I think part of this, like a lot of searchers could probably learn these lessons ahead of time by talking with like peer groups of folks who are in the seat, right? Because my guess is nobody is immune from this feeling. Nobody is immune from like I mean, it is a hard change when you get in the seat. Like there's no, if anything, like it starts so hard and so fast, like you kind of go numb for 6 months while
Totally.
you're getting through those early transition days. So I think, just spending a few calls or, maybe the last 6 weeks of your acquisition, which is the worst time. You're like underwater. The bank has sent you the checklist, like you're trying to manage the seller and all these things. But just sort of like mentally preparing yourself, maybe joining a peer group kind of thing to give you that mental space. I too got some help on this front. And the kind of things that I did were, and you'll hear this a fair bit, try to carve out like a half a day to work. This is dirty, but on the business,
Yep.
which might be as simple as like working on the business, and working in the business doesn't feel all that different when you're in the first year or two, but maybe working from somewhere else so that you're not like the first business we ever bought. The office felt like a call center. It was a customer call center. And we got to a point where we could kind of feel the cadence or predict the revenue outcome of the day based on like the cadence of the calls that came in.
Yep.
And so in many ways, as soon as I walked into the office, the phone would ring, and it would ring at a pace that was either kind of fast and exciting, and we knew it'd be a big revenue day, or slow and concerning. And I would have like some anxiety around like the phone calling, the noise of the ringing. And so just getting away from the office for a day or a half a day a week kind of just brought the stress level down. So something as stupid as that might help.
Well, that's a really interesting point, because like on the one hand, your daily routines really matter. On the other hand, you can't let yourself get whipped around by the daily gyrations of the business. Right. And so there's this like weird dichotomy between like staying focused in the present for yourself, but not letting the business whip you around. Right. Because like I feel the same way. Like if our crew has a problem on a job site for a given day and it's going to cause an issue, or we got to go back and do a job fix, like that kind of like messes with my focus, or like, all of that. But when I think about it now, like whatever, it's been 3-ish years, like we've had something like 600 and almost 700 days of crew work, right, over that period. Like any one given day doesn't actually matter. But it does impact your ability to get anything done.
And it kills your psyche, because at the end of the day, you have to go into this with a 5 or 10 year plan or an expectation. It might take 5 or 10 years for this to be financially fruitful. Whether that means like you're less involved in the business and so life is better and easier, or a financial windfall. But either way, like I think you have to have that expectation. You have to make it long enough in the seat to get there. And if it's unsustainable, like mentally, whatever it is, like I don't know. I think you're probably one of the first people to speak to making it sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you consider the fact that like things compound over time. Right? Like if you can make it to year 10, the like 5% growth in year 10 is so much larger on like a fixed dollar basis than the 20% growth in year 1. And so like, we were talking in the last episode about, do I care about IRR versus do I just care about MOIC? Like in theory, if you only care about MOIC, I mean, you only care about actually like dollars of profit. Like you should be optimizing for like, how do I get to do this for 10 years and not 3 years?
Good point. Which kills your IRR. So
kills your IRR, but like over time actually generates more dollars.
So the last like takeaway I have from this is I worry some of the people with more finance, Wall Street type backgrounds might suffer the most from this, because in many ways the switch from routines is the starkest. I also think, or I guess I worry a little bit, that like people that come from investment banking and private equity might be doing this more for the financial opportunity than anything.
Yep.
Like they're not doing it to have the lifestyle and routine of a small business owner. They're doing it because they've read and they're smart and they know that there's an opportunity to make a financial windfall. And
Yep.
like the only thing you have to do to remind yourself how distant that financial windfall is like go toggle your returns in a financial model. It can be a very simple one over like changing the exit sale price. Like just go change that by, a turn of EBITDA or whatever it is. And
Yep.
it's so meaningfully impacts the searcher because that's where all of their return is
Yes.
because
it's
at
all
that
it's
point,
all backloaded. Yep.
after the bank gets paid, after the investors are paid back, it is so back end loaded that it reminds you that this is all if your goal is a financial windfall, it's all in the exit price. And much of that is uncontrollable. Like the multiple at which you sell is entirely uncontrollable. But then it's like the other factors are also uncontrollable. Like the industry you bought in, it's unlikely you're going to change that.
Right.
And so it's really like, what can you do to grow revenue and earnings? And that's pretty much it.
I mean, there's the concept in public equities of like an IPO window, right? Like, are the markets open to like a stock going public or not? There is a little element of that in private markets too, right? Where like right now, like all of this tariff uncertainty is making deals harder to close if they are tariff impacted, right? So like if you had sort of in the back of your head said, hey, you know what? I'm just going to grind for 5 years. I'm going to put everything else on hold. It's going to have like, I don't think people like actively think about it like this, but it works out this way. Like it's going to have an impact on my spouse. It's going to have an impact on my kids. It's going to have an impact on my friends and my family. But at 5 years, I will have built it to a spot that when I sell, it will have like this net worth outcome that I'm now free. And you might have done that and been ready to launch a sale process like a month ago, and it turns out like you actually have to delay that for another 2 years because like nobody's gonna buy this at a reasonable multiple until like the tariff picture settles out. And then it's like, oh my God, am I gonna do this for 2 more years, 3 more years? And like that's if it works out in 2 or 3 more years, and you don't know. It's just such a like there's so many like what ifs you have to bet on to be able to like get out that like if your bet is you're gonna grind it to the finish line, it's sketchy.
It is sketchy. But we've been talking about like a lot of negatives or cons from that email we got. I think there are definitely pros because like this is terrible. I hate this phrase, but like lifestyle design in many ways, you have more control over that. And so I think if there's a conclusion to all of this is that you just have to be incredibly thoughtful about the daily lifestyle that you will have as a small business owner relative to where you're coming from. And the kind of people that I think can find themselves happy is like, imagine the consultant, like the Accenture or, BCG or McKinsey consultant who's on the road, 4 days a week, 45 weeks a year, or like the regional sales rep who is on the road every week, going to conferences, visiting customers. In a way, like pivoting or rotating to being a small business owner. I don't know about you. I'm sure you don't really get on planes other than by choice.
No, it's totally different. I mean, it reminds me actually of this advice I got from one of the CEOs at our portfolio companies when I was making the switch. And he was saying like, to be a good CEO, you have to have some non-negotiables. Which like, I hadn't really thought about this until more recently, but in the finance world, like nobody is modeling that, right? Like nobody's senior to you or in big law, right? Like everything is negotiable in their life, right? Like if a deal is important enough or a problem is big enough, like everything is negotiable. And so like you kind of get trained into this mentality of like everything in my routine is negotiable for the business. And it's just like not actually how good CEOs run their companies.
Say more. Like, what do you mean by non-negotiables?
I mean, like the example that this CEO gave me, and to be clear, like he took a business that was doing like -5% same store sales growth he turned it around and he doubled EBITDA over 8 years, and
Sheesh.
exited, right? Like
Yeah.
really good outcome, 80 quarters in a row of beating budget. Not 80 quarters, 80 months in a row of beating budget. But for him, like one of his non-negotiables is like every morning from like, I forget, like 7:30 to 8:30, he works out. And like not a single person in my private equity life like had that concept. Like, yeah, they all, like most of them worked out. But like if somebody needed to schedule a call at 7:30 because like just like how the time zones worked out, like they would do it, right? Like it was negotiable. Whereas for the CEO, he's just like, no, like if you schedule it at that time, I'm not coming.
This is starting to feel like when I have to talk to my therapist about boundaries, but it's probably a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And
I
like,
don't know why it's different. Like, I don't know if like would private equity people be better at their jobs if they were better at setting boundaries? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like when I was in PE, we've all sort of like convinced ourselves that it has to be this urgent for us to compete. But like, it seems clear that like CEOs of businesses, good CEOs, and I've seen this concept of non-negotiables from other places too. I'm sure you have. Like, it's not. That just is how good business leaders operate. It also like signals to your team, like, hey, like you're allowed to have non-negotiables. You're allowed to sort of structure your life in a way that works. Like there's a real signaling value as well. So I don't know. I've thought more about that. Like I still don't quite have non-negotiables.
it's hard because it's such a fire drill at the beginning, you know, and it's very easy to slip into the trap of like you are on call 24/7
Totally.
and everything feels like a big deal, but it's a good concept.
Do you have any non-negotiables?
I guess I'm realizing I probably have too much in my day that's negotiable. Having kids was the way I chose to have some more non-negotiables. So like if you were to spend the day with me, you would be surprised how early I start my day and then how early I end my day. I try to work it around the kids' routines because I mean, the good news is like during the day, they're at school, right? So from like 8 to 3, generally, me being home is not valuable to my family.
Right.
But that 6:30 to 8 a.m. window and the 5:30 to 8 window is
right.
Like that's expensive time. So I think you gave the example of exercise and I definitely need to like sign up for that one.
Right.
But at least while my kids are young, I think I'm choosing to put that one below, the family time because that's part of why I got into this is not to be away a lot, not to be overwhelmed and have my family pay that cost of being a business owner.
Yep. I mean, it reminds me of, that Atomic Habits book. I haven't read it. I've just like read enough about it that I feel like I've read it. But he talks, I think the author's name is James Clear. I guess. He talks about the idea that like to actually change habits, you need to make it part of your identity. And so like for you, like your identity of like, I am a parent is a stronger identity than like, I am a healthy person, or like I am a parent might be like on par or maybe slightly above, like I am a business leader.
That's a great point. So what are you right now?
I don't know.
In this phase.
That's a challenge. I think because I'm with you, like I am a healthy person is like nowhere on the radar right now, which is a bummer. And like, I would love to shift that, but it's not, it's like, if I'm being honest, it's not. I think,
same.
Yeah. Like, I think like I am a kind of like, I'm a coach is a big one for me right now, right? Whether it's my team or in the small business community, like I'm some sort of a coach or teacher. I think the second one that feels most important right now is like, I'm a good partner, right? Like and like Anna's finally moving up to Seattle actually in a couple of weeks, which is exciting. But like we're gonna have to totally reframe our like routines. So, like we're gonna live together after 2 years of long distance, right? Like that comes with a whole different set of like how we want our life to look. And so that feels like, okay, like if I'm actively, like, as I plan out what my routines are going to look like and non-negotiables are going to look like I want that identity of like, I'm a good partner to be at the forefront, along with like, I'm a good business leader or coach.
So you might have to shift how you do one or two of those things in order to make that the case.
Yeah. I mean, like a big one that Anna and I have negotiated over is if I work on Saturdays, right?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
frankly, I love working on Saturdays. Like, I feel like I could get so much done on a Saturday in a way that like you probably feel this way too, I imagine. But like Saturdays to me feel like a really productive time when I want to use it, and I feel like I'm opting into it, which is kind of cool. But Anna's point, which is correct, is like Saturday is the only day of the week that I don't have work the next day or work that day. It's my only clean day of the week. Because like on Sunday, you're starting to think about Monday. On Friday, you're exhausted because you worked all week and you worked that day. Like her point to me is like, hey, like Saturday might be it is your only day of the week that like you can wake up recharged and you can go to bed charged, right?
Can we go down this rabbit hole a little bit? It might be important.
Yeah, please.
We talked about how I got to go to the Masters last week or 2 weeks ago, I forget. And it was the only day I've put my phone down, like truly down. I couldn't see it. I had to leave it at the house for 12 hours.
Right.
And I can tell you, I haven't done that in a decade, which is terrible. And so it kind of refreshed some ideas in my head around on the weekends or when you're away, like putting the phone down, putting the email down, putting those things down. The break is not a break if you're trying to juggle, which is what a lot of people do on their weekends. They'll try to like softly check the email, softly respond to phone calls. And I am now more committed than ever to be done when I'm done. But I think we all like, you can work whatever your life looks like. You can work your job and your life together. For instance, I don't play golf on weekends. Like we have mutual friends who call me and ask me to play golf on weekends, and I just never say yes.
Okay.
So golf, if I'm going to play it for the last 5 years, for the last 7 years, has been, it either has to take away from work or from like, my personal time, whatever that means. Right. But it's not going to take away from the 2 days a week where the 5 of us are at home together.
Right. That makes sense.
Weekend work, which is also, I think it's super valuable. It's the one time your head is clear. Right. It's the one time your inbox is not getting slammed.
Yep.
So what I do is I still have a baby at home who takes a nap every day. And so the weekend routine is my wife gets an escape during nap time. She'll sometimes go by herself or she'll take the big kids and go have fun. Yep. And I get to be home for 2 hours, sort of playing dad and making sure my daughter can nap. But I also get 2 hours each weekend or 2 hours each day of each weekend to play the catch up. So at least I don't go back into Monday feeling like I'm behind the 8 ball again.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think the key thing that you're doing then is like, it is boxed, right? Like there is a time that you're going to work. It's not bleeding into your whole day. Like there's a time you're going to do it. There's a time you're going to stop doing it. And the rest of your family can kind of understand what you're doing.
Yep. Yeah.
Which I think is very different of a approach to weekend work than how a lot of people feel about it.
Totally. And to be clear, like there is no way to do this. It's just coming into it with an expectation. Like everybody has constraints, right? And maybe another constraint for you is like when you go see Anna, like you can't exactly be on call the way you like to be.
Totally. I mean, I remember when I started dating Anna and we're doing long distance, I went back to New York to just like visit friends or something. And I got dinner or lunch with one of my former bosses from PE. And he was like, oh, like, how is this long distance thing working? Like, don't you work every Saturday? And I was like, oh. And he's one of our investors too. So I was like, oh, no.
How do I answer this?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to be lying to somebody.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, no. Like, he was like, why don't you guys just run a crew on Saturday? I was like, oh, well, the guys don't want it. And I'm like, I don't want it either. But yeah, like that was a real, like, me going and visiting Anna, I think was actually a pretty good forcing function for me to start to build out the business infrastructure. Actually, it's a lot. So it's been about a year since I acquired our first add-on. And so the 2 weeks prior to the add-on closing, I took 2 weeks off, which I've never done in my working career, which was interesting. And even Anna and her friends would be like, well, you didn't really take them off. You're still working on the add-on acquisition. And I was like, I know. But I was like taking it off from work, right? So like all I did while I was on my 2 weeks off is I just got the add-on closed, but I didn't do any day-to-day work. And
Wait, so are you calling that vacation, or are you calling that like I built in space to make sure my deal closed?
well, I at the time, somewhat jokingly, somewhat seriously, was like, I'm taking a sabbatical for 2 weeks. To me, that felt like I'm so removed from the business. If I'm going to be in California, you guys deal with the day to day. The like getting the acquisition closed felt like that's just like side work almost. But yeah, which I think Anna would disagree with that characterization of it. But it was anyways, it was like 2 weeks where I was like, okay, I came back and asked the team, I was like, how did that go? And like, they were pretty much fine. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, there were certain things that didn't get done and like some of my tasks that got pushed, but like, it was a good forcing function to be like, hey, like, I can set some boundaries. I can set some, like limits to this, and like things will be okay, and it'll make me better at my job.
You just made me think of something that might be totally off the rails, but I'll share it. I think I'm seeing this just sort of like very high level patterns. Some of the better operators that I've interacted with have not been perfectionists, have been maybe on the other end of the spectrum of perfectionism. And what that means is they have an easier time not getting chased into a thread on something that doesn't matter. Like, in fact, they are okay if things are not going great in some unimportant, relatively speaking, areas of their business. Yep. And they just make sure they get the big things right. And that's where they spend all their energy. And so maybe kind of back to our writer, or the gentleman who emailed us, if you come into ETA as a perfectionist, and like, I'll explain that for me, like my wife and I, because it must have something to do with our life being complete chaos right now, but at home, we really enjoy cleanliness. Like we pay to have that be the case. Every night we clean up. Like, it helps the chaos of our life feel controllable because our home is clean. Like, I wonder if perfectionist personalities will struggle in ETA simply because like it's always chaos. There's always things that are wrong, and it will cause your to-do list is endless. And if you spend too much time and energy working on the stuff that's not important, but on the list, and you don't focus enough on the non-negotiables in your business, I think not only is your business not going to grow and scale, but you're not going to have longevity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not perfectionist by any means. I think my failing in this regard is that I'm pretty good at focusing on what matters, but as soon as that's done, I just move down the list, right? Like I just keep going. And I think that I'm not very good at stopping either, right? Whereas like it doesn't actually bother me. It just seems like, all right, like I should just keep going onto the next thing. And so like that also, it ends up in the same problem. Like
same problem.
Threatens your longevity. I think like if I was truly perfectionist, this would be super hard.
Totally. I think I'm starting to figure out like why I didn't enjoy operating is probably part of that.
Like you feel like you're a perfectionist?
Yeah. I mean, I remember when in those early days, like having that checklist, that to-do list, and every day during the week, it grew. I was never crossing anything off. I'd get to the weekend. I'd realize next week was going to be the same way. So I'd just kind of like wholesale, do the things, just either delegate it or cross it off the list. And like that feeling overwhelmed my mentality.
And I guess the like the learning or like the adjustment to make in that regard. Or like I felt that too, right? Like you get through the week, you worked hard all week, and your checklist got bigger, not smaller.
Yeah.
It's super demoralizing, right?
Super
and
demoralizing.
like option A is you say, okay, I just work longer hours to
Yep.
try to get ahead of it. But like that doesn't really work either because that impacts your longevity issue, right? Like it's unsustainable. And like in practice, like I found that it just like the checklist stuff just came in at a higher frequency then, right? Like the faster I got stuff done, or like, yeah, if I worked till like 9 p.m. on Monday and got 4 extra things done, like those 4 things, like item 2 on them came back on Tuesday. So it was like, I was like, it's not like you never got ahead, even if you worked harder.
And then the idea, just hire more people to help you, you're capital constrained. So,
Yeah, totally. And so I think the like option C, which is what I've kind of come around to more and more, is you just have to way slow down your expectations.
Totally.
Of change, of improvement, of any of that.
So pretty much means go back to the checklist and the things on the bottom that are unimportant and not urgent, in some respects, just have to wait.
Yep. They just have to.
Which is brutal for people who need to feel like everything is ticked off the list.
I mean, gosh, like we have in our business, we do permits for tree removal, right? We do the permits for the clients, and we operate in like 17 different jurisdictions, which each have their own tree removal code, right? So every single city has like its own version of how you do a tree removal permit. Like it has been on my list for 3 years to like have a clean readout of like what is each city's code. And we just like have never gotten to it. And I was doing it this morning because the person who does our permitting, she's on leave for 7 weeks. So I've taken that job back, which is a huge bummer. But so literally this morning, I am once again on like City of Redmond website, reminding myself like, how does this, like, what do I need to do to get this tree removal permit, and putting it in a proposal for a client. And it's just like, I know I should have this written out somewhere. This is like templatized, obviously. And I just like, it just never has gotten there. And like, you know what, like, that's okay. Like I've done a million other things. If I had also tried to get that done, like I would have been overwhelmed.
So it's funny. I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about it, and we didn't actually plan to talk about that, but maybe the sort of perfectionist mindset that's fairly common, if you have that, I would probably be thinking long and hard about whether being an owner, being an operator is the role you want to play. Because if you are enthralled by ETA and SMB, you don't have to just be a business owner to play in this world.
I mean, it's interesting because when I was speaking to those dance studio owners a couple weeks ago, that was last week. Oh my gosh. Jeez.
And here's your sign.
Yeah. Well, many of them were founders, right? And I think what I have seen is like a lot of founder owners are perfectionist, because I think to get from 0 to 1, there is an element of perfectionism that is required, because you just have to care so much about everything, and you just sort of push that ball up the hill yourself, which is why I have like a ton of respect for founder owners, because I could never do that. Right. Yeah. So, but then you sort of tick over into this like new phase of ownership where you need to get really good at delegating, and to be good at delegating, you can't be a perfectionist again. And most searchers buy in at that phase shift, right? They're buying in when the founder has grown it as much as they can, but they can't grow it anymore because they're too perfectionist to grow it anymore, and they're tired. But you're buying it at a moment in that business's life cycle where it is transitioning from a perfectionist owner to a delegator owner. And if you're also a perfectionist, like that's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, super tough.
What do you think about, maybe the last thing we'll talk about on this subject, like, so it's obviously cliche to say like they should be enjoying the journey. A small business owner should just focus on enjoying the journey as opposed to the arrival fallacy. But like, how would you, like, if you were talking to a searcher who closed, and then maybe they're 6 months in, so they've gotten through the worst of the transition, like, what would you be guiding them towards to like measure their success on any given week or month? Like what should they be striving for?
Are we talking personal or work-wise, or is that the nature of the question?
I think that's the nature of the question.
Okay, so then I think we're, especially, you and I talking, we joke this is our own therapy.
Yeah,
right. But what's clear is that creating a more sustainable routine to all of this, to this phase of life.
Mhm.
So maybe it is, deciding what personal things are the most important and making them absolutes. So, pick whatever that is and, do not trade that for any checklist item on your work list.
Yep.
You know, I would say that would be one that I screwed up. Was everything was how are the businesses doing?
Yep.
And none of it is like, how am I? How is my wife? How are my kids? None of that.
Yep.
Big mistake. I think the other one is, while we talk a lot about longevity and the return being in the future, I would be creating in your job more finish lines, more goals that are very short-term oriented. And that might sound hypocritical, but if the only thing that feels like a win is to see the bank account growing or to see your P&L looking better than it did last year, like, you're going to feel like you failed in this for a long time. And I think, so what I would be doing is like defining, and this is maybe where like a EOS helps, is it defines quarterly objectives and then you test against those. And if you're doing that well, it probably means you get some short-term satisfaction out of your grind at work instead of waiting for the P&L and the cash to look great.
Okay, I love that, because I think we could end on a tactical note, right? Is like, how do you do that tactically, or like in your day-to-day? Because I feel like this has been a big thing for me over the past year, is because I'm exactly that way. I'm like, if we don't show any EBITDA improvement or equity value increase, like, what are we doing here? Right?
Exactly.
And like, that's just not a way to live. It's not a way you're ever going to feel like you're making progress. And so I think for me, that, like, I've been using the getting things done system for the last year now, and I've found that to be very helpful. And one of the core concepts in that is like, anything that requires more than one action is a project, like, full stop.
Yep.
Right. And that just, it creates like more of a forcing function to realize like, hey, like, what is the actual end state I'm going for every time I take an action, right? So like right now, for example, like, we had a guy take a leave of absence. I promised the team that if he came back, I'd get them a party bus and we'd do like a team event. He came back. Great. Which is now I gotta like, I gotta plan this, right? But like, so for me, like, the project that I have listed on my to-do list is like, execute team party with a party bus. And then like, there's a bunch of steps that go underneath that. But like, it will never feel that compelling if you just like, oh my God, I got to go get that done. And then like, that's done. And it doesn't show up on your P&L anywhere. It's only an expense on your P&L, frankly.
Yeah.
Right. And like, but for me, I'm going to get to say like, at some point, once it's done, this project has been completed. I'm moving it to completed projects. And like, that was a success.
I like that a lot. What about the idea of when you become an owner, everything ultimately falls to you? It is your checklist, not a shared checklist. Maybe like a short-term oriented thing is to sort of define the big R&Rs that fall to you and need to, and then the R&Rs, roles and responsibilities, the things that should be on your plate, and then the things that are on your plate that shouldn't be. And I've always found, like, to the extent you can start shortening the list of your own R&Rs, and the business isn't falling apart, it means you're building a bigger business. You're probably either hiring or outsourcing functions in the business that give you capacity, longevity, and yet, like, if they're not breaking your business, they're not breaking the customer experience, they're not breaking your P&L. Like, I think that is business building.
Yeah. And importantly, it's not a binary, like, they're not breaking customer experience, they're not breaking your P&L. It's like, they're not breaking them too much, right? Like, that's actually what it is.
Yes, exactly.
Which is tough. That's
I kind of like this. This was a tough one. So when we got this email, it kind of took us both by surprise. And generally, I hope it takes everybody who's listening by surprise, because, like, in a way, it's the dream. You know, you leave your job, you buy a small company, and that small company grows. So like you have visibility to a good outcome, whatever that means. And yet like it's still the case. A lot of people aren't thrilled with where they sit.
Totally. And so that's where like the idea that like, oh yeah, once you get your deal done or once the deal starts to go well, like now I'll be happy or now things will work out. Just I feel like I really appreciated this email from this writer because I think it just really highlighted like why we want to do this podcast.
Totally. All right. That was fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you to, the writer. I appreciate you sending that in and being vulnerable. And thank you, Sam, as always, for chatting with me.
Same, Kaustubh. We'll see you next week.